I've never shared this story with anyone. I was always too afraid to be judged for it, so it's something I buried down until my friend brought it up the other day. We both have daughters, and we're talking about how we could educate them on being safe when they are teenagers and experimenting with partying. When my best friend and I were 17 years old, we went to the beach for spring break with a couple of our guy friends. My friend was talking to this guy she had met through mutual friends, and he wanted us to meet up with him at a house he and his friends had rented together. Our guy friends had ditched us to meet girls, so we decided to go ahead and go to her friend's house to hang out with them. When we get there, it was the middle of the day, and he took us inside and introduced us to everyone. Turns out almost all the guys were on a basketball team of the same university. We all hung out and they were all drinking. My friend and I were not. One guy came out with 2 glasses of what appeared to be whiskey and Coke. Against my better judgment, I started to sip it, as did my friend. There was one guy who appeared to not be athletic, and he was the only person at the house who was not friendly toward us. I'll call him Mike. Suddenly, I started to feel very buzzed. We were laughing and talking, and one guy asked me to put on his jersey. I grabbed it and put on over my clothes. "No, take off your clothes and put it on," he said in an aggressive tone. I was feeling more tipsy at this point, and I knew something was very wrong. Our parents had let us drink with them multiple times. I knew what it was like to be drunk. I knew how much I could handle before I was drunk. And one drink never made me feel like I was getting wasted. "Quit babysitting that drink. Drink up, weakling," one guy said as they all laughed. Even though I had stopped drinking, I could still feel more and more buzzed, especially since our drink barely tasted of any whiskey. My dad always had whiskey at home, and we would drink a couple whiskey Pepsis on occasion. I would feel relaxed, but this was much different. "We should go. Our friends are waiting for us." I headed to the door, and a couple guys stood in front of us. "No, no, no, you can't leave. Come sit down over here for a little bit," as they ushered us back to the couch. This sinking feeling hit my gut, and I knew we were on borrowed time. Trying to stay calm, I laughed and said, "I need to pee. Come with me." I grabbed my friend's hand, and we went to the restroom together. We both stood there, and we had already read each other's minds. I put my hands on her head and looked her in the eyes so we could both focus. "We need to leave now." Our phones both had spotty service all over the island, I'm guessing, because there was so many people packed on it. "Take my keys, tell them you're going to go get your purse, and I'll stay here. You go get the guys and come back for me." I knew this plan probably wouldn't work, but my mind was going crazy. As I opened the bathroom door, Mike was standing there. My heart sank. He was rude to us earlier, and he probably heard us talking. "Follow me and be quiet." Something inside me trusted him with everything I had in that moment. We followed him down the hallway to a garage and out to the front driveway. "Hurry up, get out of here now." We ran to the car, and I drove off to our hotel. I remember driving, but I don't remember getting to our condo. The rest of the story is from our guy friends telling us what happened. Apparently we walked in, and the guys asked us where we have been because it was already nighttime, and we were supposed to meet up to barbecue some weenies. They said we didn't say a word, just walked to our room and closed the door and passed out. We didn't come till the next day, and both of us had excruciating headaches, as if we had drank a whole bottle of cheap vodka by ourselves. To the basketball douchebags who tried to take advantage of 2 teenage girls, let's never meet again. Or I will kick you in the dick. And thank you, Mike. I wish I could thank you. I hope you're out there reading this, and you remember the brunette and blonde little girls you saved that day on the island. Apologies for formatting and grammar. I'm on mobile and too lazy to proofread. I walked into the bathroom at my community college, and there's another guy in there, and he's at one of the 2 urinals. I walk in and step up to the other urinal, and from the moment I walked in to the moment I unzipped my pants, this guy was staring at me. In my head, I thought maybe this guy is on the spectrum because our college has a lot of students that are special needs and is a great place for them to get a degree and has really good programs to work with them. So it felt off, but I thought maybe it's nothing. I wish that was where this interaction ended. He finished before me and went over to wash his hands. I was just waiting for him to finish up and leave the restroom because it felt really weird. While I'm still at the urinal, and this guy is washing his hands, he looks at me and says, "You're a complete stranger, so you won't judge me." Is it wrong of me to take out my anger on people I don't know? My first thought was, this guy isn't right, but I should listen. But I answered and I said, no, that's not right. That isn't healthy for you or the other person. He answers, that's the conclusion I've come to as well. Thanks, and then he turns and walks out of the bathroom without even drying his hands. I don't know about that guy. I have a bad feeling about him, and I don't know what to do about this situation. So, bathroom guy, I hope you get the help you need. But let's never meet again. Edit. From all the replies, it seems most people are just as confused as I was. Some say this guy could have been dangerous or unstable. That was kind of the vibe I initially had. Some say this could have been a question someone with a mental illness would ask, not aware of social norms, and with no ill intent. That could very well have been it too. Personally, I hope it was the latter, and hope I don't see him on the news for doing something horrible one day. So I'm currently a sophomore in college, and the bar scene here is pretty big. Going out for the night to get special deals on alcohol so you can get plastered with your friends is kind of the go-to here. Despite this, I'm not a huge drinker and don't enjoy it a lot because it tastes so bad and hurts my stomach. I do enjoy the company though, and often go just to be out with my friends or meet new people. A lot of times I'm called the dad of the group because I end up taking care of them all the time. That's the prelude to what happened when I decided to go with them one Friday night. So we got all dressed up, pre-gaming a bit at my friend Q's apartment before we Ubered downtown to one of our pretty well-known college bars/clubs. After we got in, my friends immediately split off into tiny groups combing over the club for girls they wanted to try their shot at spending the night with. This is going to make me sound weird, but one-night stands aren't really my thing, and I don't want to end up cock-blocking my friends. So, instead of looking for girls, I usually find someone at the bar and make friends with them. I was chatting with some dude that was wearing a cowboy hat when eventually a girl approached me. She was pretty cute, probably 5'6", with dirty blonde hair and eyes that I think were light brown, but they were so light they almost looked gold, which threw me off a bit. She asked if she could buy me some drinks in exchange for being her friend for the night, and I of course accepted, because hey, that's what I came here for anyway, right? Anyways, she kept her word, and we started talking to each other, and she introduced herself as Alexia, but to call her Alex. I asked her some basic stuff about if she came with friends, if she went to college here, etc., to which all the answers were no. That struck me as pretty odd, as it's honestly pretty unsafe to be in the downtown area alone as a girl at like 1 a.m. in the morning. She said she wanted to hear about me though, and actually seemed pretty excited to listen. It felt like a really nice change of pace because I'm usually the one learning about other people, not the other way around. It also could have been the alcohol starting to take effect since I'm actually a pretty big lightweight, as like I said, I don't actually binge drink often. The whole time I was talking, she stared into my eyes and had this warm smile that made me feel so acknowledged, if that even makes sense. I felt like she was enjoying her time as much as I was, and that just made me even happier, because I thought it meant I made a new friend. That was when her demeanor began to change though. She started to get kind of flirty, and eventually asked if I wanted to go home with her. Like I said, I'm not really a one-night stand guy, and I explained I like to get to know people a little better before sleeping together. I'm pretty sure I saw what I think was anger flash across her face, but it was quickly replaced with another smile, and she suggested just going home and watching a movie instead. I agreed and pulled out my phone to begin ordering an Uber, but she basically grabbed my wrist and started guiding me outside. I was confused, trying to ask if she was planning to drive after drinking, but she wouldn't really answer me. We eventually got outside the club, and she pointed to a black Honda Civic parked right at the front of the club. That was when all the warning bells rang like a tornado had passed through them. I was pretty drunk at this point in the night, maybe 6 or 7 drinks deep, but I was still aware enough to see the red flags. She said she had came alone, but the lane the car was parked in was only for pickups, and I never saw her order an Uber. Somebody would have had to be driving the car. This was enough to make me uncomfortable, and I asked again if she was planning to drive the car. She said yes, as she continued walking me closer to it. I knew that was a bald-faced lie, and as we got closer, my heart sank as I noticed the outline of 3 other guys in the car. At that point, my adrenaline kicked in, and I yanked my hand away from her and said there's no way in hell I'm getting in that car with her. She tried begging me one more time, saying she really wanted to have sex and would let me do whatever I wanted, but I already had turned around to walk back to the club. She started cussing me out, practically screaming at the top of her lungs as I walked back up to the bouncers to go in. I texted my friends what happened, and we all met back up and went home. It was obvious she was going to college bars, trying to get guys drunk before offering to sleep with them so she could get them in that car with 3 other men to rob them, or do God knows what else. I called my city's anonymous tip line and left a detailed description of the girl, car, and place where it happened. That night was a real wake-up call for me, and I'm so thankful that despite being drunk that night, I was able to piece together what was happening before it was too late. Please remember to always be safe when going out with friends, especially when it's late at night or if alcohol is involved. But to Alexia, who I saw that night at the bar, let's not meet. Hi everyone, I want to start off by saying that I posted this story a while ago, but it was on a different account, one I've since deleted, and a lot has happened with this person since the first time I told the story on here. I tried to find the post but couldn't, so I'm posting it again because I am currently scared and angry over this situation. Anyway, let's get started. When I was a freshman in college in October of 2018, a guy I'll call Ron Jones stalked me. I met Ron through one of our mutual friends, Chris, because they were in a school club together. When I met Ron, I thought he was kind of strange, but he was nice and seemed interesting. He claimed to be Slavic and had an accent to back that up. I just thought that he might seem weird because of cultural differences. I go to school in a rural, southern area, and I figured the culture shock between here and wherever he was originally from was a lot to handle. Anyway, we exchanged numbers and texted infrequently for a couple of weeks. On October 3rd, 2018, a friend of mine and I went to a drag show on our campus. We weren't out super late, but it was dark when the show ended, and we began walking back to our dorm. I'd been texting Ron a bit during the night because he was unable to get a ticket to the drag show and he wanted to know how it was. At some point in the conversation, I mentioned that I wanted to grab some orange juice on the way back to my dorm. Don't know why I mentioned that to him. I think I was just making conversation. My friend and I stopped in the convenience store near our building so I could get said orange juice, and Ron was already there. He said something about buying the juice for me, and I thanked him, but declined. He got kind of mad and started to walk away, which was odd to me, but I let it go. My friend and I walked out of the store and saw that he was standing outside. Our dorm was actually right across from the building the convenience store was in, so he saw us enter the building. My friend and I parted ways, and I walked up to my room, which was on the 2nd floor of the building facing the convenience store. I kick myself for doing this now, but I went to my window, opened it, and yelled down to Ron when I saw that he was still standing there. I apologized for declining his offer to buy the juice for me, because I felt like I had been rude. Guilty conscience, I guess. He stood below my window, started talking to me about random stuff, and at one point he said something that was odd. He was like, "Can I flirt with you?" I enjoy doing that, and I just laughed and said, okay, because I had no clue how to respond to that, and I just figured he was a flirtatious person.
Stupid, I know.
But that's not the dumbest thing I did. I ended up going outside to sit and talk to Ron for a little bit because I felt bad for being rude earlier, as if declining someone's offer to buy you something is rude, geez. While we were outside, he didn't say anything of note, and he was acting pretty normal. It got cold out, so he asked if we could go inside to talk, and I said sure. At this point in the year, I'd had several guy friends over to my room just to do work and chat, so I didn't see an issue with it. And things started out normally, but they quickly got scary. Out of nowhere, Ron basically turned into a different person when we were alone in my room. He stopped blinking, he held eye contact super intensely, and he was laughing in this really low, creepy way. On top of that, his Slavic accent disappeared. That's when he told me he had lied about being Slavic and that he's native to the state our college is in. He got increasingly more creepy, and there was nothing I could do about it because I had a single room my freshman year. At one point, he grabbed me in a hug and wouldn't let go of me until I said, "Let go of me," right now, 3 times or so. He told me he'd done a lot of bad things and that if I wanted to put him in jail, he could give me the names of people who have evidence against him. He said he hates Jews and black people and everyone until they give him a reason not to hate them. He said a lot of weird, nearly sexual stuff to me as well. Like, he went on and on about how showering alone isn't fun and that it's better with another person and that he'd be willing to do that if I wanted to. Keep in mind, this guy had a girlfriend and he acknowledged that. He even said he'd go after me if he weren't dating someone, which freaked me out. He asked if he could sleep in my room, and I said no, and I used that to tell him that I was ready for bed and that he needed to leave. As he left, he said, "Do you want to know how unsecure the locks on your door really are?" He also pulled a few IDs out of his wallet, all with different names. I closed the door on him and looked through the peephole. He stood there, looking at the door, for an uncomfortably long time before leaving. After that, he called me multiple times throughout the month, always at weird times. He started appearing everywhere I was around campus. The friend who had introduced us, Chris, actually started walking everywhere with me because he noticed Ron following me around and lurking around corners when I couldn't see him. Apparently, he was around me a lot more than I realized because Chris began carrying a knife whenever we went places. Ron was everywhere, and he would come up to me and put his arm over me and whisper stuff like, "We need to talk," whenever he saw me. For a while, he would lurk outside my dorm, but that stopped all of a sudden one day. I later found out that Chris had told my RA about Ron and that he had been banned from my building. I hadn't done that myself because I thought I was overreacting. I wasn't. I blocked him on my phone, and he hasn't contacted me since. He did apologize to me one day on campus last semester when we ran into each other, and I was actually willing to accept it and move on until recently. So here I am 2 years later, and everything that happened with Ron has come back up again. I found out recently that he has a history of stalking women, like an extensive history going back at least 5 years. I met another victim of his who he stalked before coming to my university. She had gone to community college for a bit, and he stalked her while he was also a student there. He followed her to our university after apparently being suspended from the school after 3 separate stalking incidents were linked to him. The victim I met told me something worrying. Ron is currently an RA on our campus, and she was one of his residents. When she told the residential office that Ron had stalked her in the past, they told her all they could do was have her move dorms, which she did. They then said they couldn't do anything to discipline him because the stalking didn't occur at our university. She and I both reported our experiences with him to the residential office, who then tipped off the campus police, who then spoke to the dean of students. The thing is, though, when I gave his name to the residential office, they had no idea who I was talking about. He'd given me a fake first and last name, and I had to do a lot of searching to find out his real name. I knew he was sketchy when I saw the 4 separate IDs in his wallet, but I didn't ever think he'd given me a fake name when I met him. After talking to residential living, I talked to the police. When I talked to the police, they didn't seem to care about what I had to say. Actually, the officer I spoke to talked over me while I was explaining the times he followed me and said that he'd heard all he needed to hear. I spoke to the dean of students, who asked me some clarifying questions about the police report he'd received. The police had mixed up several details of my story with the stories of other victims. Apparently more people than just myself and the girl I met have come forward with information about this person. There are even reports that he got physical with 2 separate people before coming to this university. Last week I saw him on campus. He's still an RA, even though multiple women have spoken to higher-ups about his behavior. If I hear from him, I'm issuing a no-contact order to ensure that he stays away from me. Right now, though, that feels like too much of a hassle because we're all going home for a 2-month break due to COVID education anyway. That's kind of it. It's anticlimactic, and there's no sense of justice in all of this. But hopefully this story teaches you all to stay on your toes and not to think you're overreacting when someone is being sketchy. Stay safe out there, guys. This is a longish story. In college, about 2.5 years ago, I met this guy. I wanted to make a friend, and he seemed harmless, despite my feeling that something was off. At that time, I ignored my gut in favor of gaining a local friend. He seemed to have a crush from the time that he met me, and while I was flattered, I wasn't interested. I told him as much, and he didn't argue. At first. The next time I met him, he had some arguments for why we were compatible. I stuck to my guns. He seemed accepting and didn't bring it up again. We talked and walked around school. In the course of our conversations, he learned a lot about my interests and hobbies and checked them all out, then reported back to me about where he'd visited or when he thought he had an idea to spend time together. I didn't realize it at the moment, but he was really good at talking about nothing at all, and I came away knowing literally nothing about him besides his name. One day, I was about to get kicked out of the building because they were closing and I didn't have a ride home. You probably guessed what is about to happen. He took me home. I was smart about it, telling my father when we left and who I was with. Things started to get creepy after that. He started showing up where I was by coincidence. He would stand outside my class and stare at me. I tried talking to the prof about it, but all he said was that I was smart in changing my seat in class and that I should go to campus security if he made me feel threatened. I asked him to give me some space, and he quit obviously showing up everywhere. One day I came home from school to my brother telling me about a trespasser on our property. We live in the middle of nowhere, and around our neighborhood, you'll see a lot of posts or mailboxes painted lavender. It's a code to everyone there that we don't like strangers trespassing on our property. My dad made a big deal about it, and either side of our driveway is graced by a lavender post. The trespasser must have parked in a neighbor's yard, then navigated the forest behind our house, because when my brother confronted him, he ran into the forest. He hadn't parked anywhere nearby. My brother described this man to me, and he fit the description of my school stalker. I guess my brother ran out with our little cricket and waved it around to the guy. A cricket may injure a small animal, but at the range bro described, he probably wouldn't even have bruised from it. It's still scary to see someone with a weapon. My brother was alone at the time. I decided to end my silence toward him. It seemed better to know where he was than for him to show up unexpectedly. I didn't want to ruin his college opportunity because of an overreaction on my part, and I didn't know that security would believe me anyway, as I was seen with him a lot before. I ended up dropping a class that semester and failed another. The next semester went better, and I rarely see him now. I've since moved in with my fiancé about half an hour from my old home. I dropped out of college so that I can find out what I want to do with my life before I spend money and time on school again. To one college creep, I'd say let's never meet again, but until I move from the area, I don't think that's feasible. In the fall of 2010, I decided to go back to college. I was a single mom of 3 boys, but they were all in school now, and me going back was finally possible. The school I went to is a regional campus to a very large university and located in a neighborhood that is known for crime, meth, heroin, prostitution, etc. But it was only a 20-minute drive from my home, and I didn't feel unsafe about going there. The first day and first class were intimidating. I didn't know anyone and was a lot older than most students. I was 28 at the time. I sat down in the back of the room at a table, and a few minutes later a lady, who was around my age, sat down next to me. She was very skinny, smelled like cigarettes, greasy hair, sunken eyes, but she started to talk to me and seemed normal enough. She started off the conversation telling me that she chose to sit next to me because I was wearing the prettiest blouse in the room. Strange, but as an awkward person, I leave a lot of leeway for people to say or do awkward things before I think too deep into things. She didn't have a backpack, any books, a pen, notebook, nothing. She said her financial aid hadn't come through yet, but she didn't want to fall behind on classes and asked could she share my book. I agreed and gave her a pen and paper also. After the first class, she asked if I would mind going to the library with her so she can scan some of the pages to take home. I agreed, and we started to head to the library. She stops and looks at her phone and says her son just texted and needs her to come home to do something. She asks if I'll come with her. I tell her I have another class shortly and can't go with her. I ask if she still wants to go to the library first. She says no, that she has to get to her son, but really can't go alone. I kept telling her I cannot go with her, and she starts crying. At this point, we were in a common area outside, and the parking lot was to one side, and the library the other. I tell her I need to go to the library, and she's welcome to come, talk, whatever she needs, but I have to go. I didn't like being outside away from people with this woman anymore, and was trying to get back to a busier area. She gets really upset, starts screaming, basically says fuck you to me. She may have actually said fuck you. I can't remember how the interaction went exactly, because I was frozen in confusion by how quickly she transitioned from friendly, then to crying and scared, and to now screaming in my face a slew of hateful, angry things. I turn around to start walking to the library and called my friend so that I would have someone aware if this lady tried anything more than just screaming. I get to the library vestibule and watch her through the glass doors. She is standing at the parking lot. Then a car pulls up with a man in it and is obviously upset with a woman. They're arguing, but I can't hear them from inside the vestibule. Eventually, she gets in the car and leaves with him. The next day, I was dreading class because I didn't know what this woman's attitude would be that day. But she wasn't there the next day. In the end, she never came back to class. I didn't know her name.